Okay. Hi everybody, this is Diane again with Phil Sewing. Today what we're going to show you is how another variation to making this bench pillow that's by Kimberbell. Okay. I got the Kimberbell product, and I don't know, I always want to change things, and so today what we're going to work on is making a change, you know, but I think it's going to be a change that you will enjoy, and it'll introduce you more to different features on your Pfaff Creative Icon 2 or Icon 1, whichever machine you might have. We'll be able to get in there, and I can show you some features that I hope you'll enjoy. Okay, so first thing first, we're going to talk about this a little bit. I do want you to make sure you read all the directions that come with the Kimberbell product, okay? I printed mine all out. Here's my printout of all the directions. Lots of directions to read, but they're very good and they're very explicit. So definitely read these directions, because that's going to get you started on your own for creating this project. They also have a bunch of general instructions, and I printed mine all out as well. So you might want to go ahead and print them out. So it's more general instructions, so you might want to do that. And they also have instructions for the 5x7 hooping. So if you have a system or a machine that has a smaller frame or hoop that comes with it, you would be able to use the 5x7 field to create your project with. Okay, so with that all being said, just letting you know that all these directions are wonderful. They you know, really, you know, direct you where you need to go, you know, in case you have any kind of questions with the creation of this pillow. As you can see, there's 7 different panels, and today we're going to be working on one of those panels, and I'm going to show you how to create the background image that you're seeing here in the light blue threads. Okay, so what we're going to do, power up your machine, put it onto the embroidery side of the machine. So you're going to select embroidery. When you power up your machine, that heading all pops up, you know, and you're going to select it at this point in time. Okay. You're also going to make sure your embroidery foot is on, and you're going to put a brand new bobbin in your bobbin case and a new needle as well. I'm using an 80-12 sharp needles for this project. So what we're going to do is just go ahead, tap the screen. Okay, I'm already in embroidery edit, so I'm going to just go forward with it. Very first thing I'm going to do, I know, and I've hooped my stabilizer already, so I already know the size hoop that I'm going to be using. It's the 260 by 200 hoop, and that size is located right on the front side of the intersection of the hoop. So I'm going to go ahead, put that back up here, and go to my hoop options. In the hoop options, I'm going to scroll up or down, and I'm going to select the Creative Elite hoop, which is 260 by 200. So select it, and then we're going to close out of it to remove that. We just want to make sure whenever we bring in a design into the workspace, it takes into account the size of that hoop that I've selected, and it will resize the shape or whatever it might be that I'm bringing in. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating a template, okay, for that background that we were talking about for our pillow. So the very first thing I'm going to do is go into Applique Creator. Once in Applique Creator, I then will choose the shape that I want to work with. I'm going to select the shapes and then the basic shape and do a square. Okay. Then I'm going to close out of the load shape category. Now when you're in here, it's got it all set up so that I can do my 3-step process for applique. But in this situation, the only reason I'm using the applique shape or the applique creator is to create a template that I know I have to stay within. These stitches will not stitch out, okay? So what I'm going to first do, I'm going to go into my edit down here, edit applique, and down at the bottom here there's a little trash can. I'm going to go ahead and tap on the trash can, and what that does is it removes that satin stitch from around my applique shape that I have on the workspace. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and resize that shape because I need a size, like for my pillow, for this square over here, okay, that has to be approximately 4.5 inches by 10.5 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and resize that square to those dimensions. Now, if my padlock is on, okay, I'm going to click on it to open the padlock. So now I can resize this so it's not maintaining that square shape like when we had selected our shapes, it came in as a square. If I left that padlock on, all it would do is resize it as a square, not as a rectangle like I need it to be. So right here, right above this little wheel, there's a number. You've got your horizontal settings and you've got your vertical axis. So we're going to start first with our horizontal. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to enter in the number. So I'm going to say 4.5. You could have put the 0 in or not. 4.5 is 4.5 inches. For those of you that do not have your machine set up for inches yet, you would change it. You would come up here to your settings field and go to the machine, and right down here under units you would select inches. It's either in millimeters or inches. I like to rotate back and forth between the two depending upon what I'm trying to accomplish and the information that I have to work with. In the directions, if you were to read the directions, it does everything in inches. So we're going to go to inches. So we're going to select inches, say OK to it, and OK again down here. Now everything here is as well as is in inches, as as well. So the next one, the vertical setting, I'm going to tap on it. Opens up my little keypad, and here I'm going to do 8.50. Click on OK. So I'm happy with this, and so I'm going to say OK to it. Closes it out, scrolls over to my screen, my workspace here, and it is selected. So now what I'm going to do, I'm just, that's the area that I know when I build my stitches, that's where the stitches will have to stay within those fields. 4.5 by 8.5 inches. Now I'm going to tap outside the work area to deselect it. It's not necessary to have it selected at this time. And so now we're going to go into Sequence Creator. Sequence Creator is right down here at the bottom section of your field. Open Sequence Creator. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be drawing, to create that background, I'm going to be drawing from my, my sewing stitches, or any of the decorative stitches, quilting art stitches, satin stitches, whatever it might be. You can bring those into your workspace here and utilizing them in the embroidery field. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to choose the decorative stitches. Now there it's in 5.4, the subcategory. And I'm going to scroll down, and here, right here, number 13 is the stitch I'm going to work with. Now I'm going to hold it, and that's a long hold, and it places that stitch up on my workspace. I'm going to close out of this so that it opens up into the main workspace again. Now I'm going to go to Stitch or Edit Stitch, and under Edit Stitch I can resize that particular stitch if I so choose, or if that's needed for the project I'm working on. But in this situation, I was able to use the default size. Now, right over here, these toolbars are floating toolbars, so you can move them wherever you need to move them, and I just moved this one down. Okay? Right up in here is my information sheet. Okay? I know that when I place those stitches, as many as it might be, it's going to accumulate right up into this, under the information category. So what I'm going to do then, I want to duplicate these. So I want, and I'm going to click on the paste feature right here. With every click, it's adding a stitch. Okay, and you're going to watch how tall that is, or how long it's going to be right there. So I'm going to add another one. Notice as I click, it adds it up 2.83 now. I'm going to continue adding stitches. Okay, now I'm at 8.50. If you remember, that is the height of our applique design that we had placed on the workspace. Or I should say the template, okay? So 8.50, that's the size. So that's all good. So we're going to say okay to this because it's the height I need. And I'm going to scroll back into my workspace. Now in my workspace, it pops it right into the middle, but I want it placed over to the right side of the workspace. Now what I can also do here, if I need to fine-tune any kind of movements, I come into Edit Stitch and I can use my wheel to adjust the positioning. Okay, so there it's positioned. Now again, I still have this space over here that I need to fill up. So I'm going to duplicate this row of stitches by clicking on the copy paste. The second stitch that we just created is right there. Okay, I'm going to do another copy and paste and place another one over in this section. So I'll have 3 rows of these decorative stitches. So now, if you look closer at the screen, I'm going to just zoom out or zoom in here so that you can see this. We have a little gap between our rows. Now we want to make sure that that row is right next to the other one, so it lines up right on top. So I'm going to go ahead and select the center one, and I'm going to move it over to the left. You can see over here the line turns darker, this row of stitches there. Well, and that means it's still not quite where I need it to be. When it gets lighter, as you saw when I just moved it this last time, it lightened up a little bit. When it lightens up, that means it's right on top of the row prior to it, or this third row. So I'm going to just click out here and just give it a double take. Sure enough, it lines up very nice. Okay, I'm going to come over here to the first one that I created and do the same thing. I'm going to move it over. There, it's turned dark, so here it's darker. We're going to click that over until it lines up over that center row of stitches. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to deselect it. So when I click on each one of these rows, it selects that row of stitches. So right there, you can see with the orange boxes or whatever selection handles that go around it, that's selected, just like this one is. Now all three of them are selected. Okay, but I don't need it to be like that right now, so we're gonna zoom in, and that is our first design. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure that the stitching is centered inside the applique area. So I'm going to come over here to my layers. Under the layers, I'm going to select the first applique area that we had created. So I'm going to close out of that, selected, and then I'm going to click down here. This is my centering tool. This is the positioning. It's right now at 0.0 by 0.0. So that's telling me that everything is in the dead center of that hoop. I'm going to just double check myself to make sure. So I clicked on that center little area of the wheel to make sure that that's the case. Now I'm going to deselect it, come back into my layers. Now what I also want to do, I want to make sure that my layers are even at the top, and I didn't check that, and I'm pretty sure they were right on target. So I'm going to just, this is just moving the information. It's not resizing, it's just moving the data that I have on my workspace downward so I could see that top area. And I think that that's pretty well set. Okay, so I'm going to go back into layers. These three stitch rows are selected, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to group them together. Okay, with them grouped together, I'm going to go ahead and here again, I'm going to center it. Now there is one that's outside the area, so I'm going to go ahead and click on that center of the wheel, and it repositions that right in the center of that applique shape. Now that I've done that, I'm going to come back into layers one more time. This time I'm going to select the two of them together, okay, and I'm going to group them. So now what happens, whenever I move one, the other moves together. They move as one unit now. Now that we have our design, or our first background design created, we want to save it onto our machine so that we can bring it up each and every time we want to use this particular design for a background stitch. So I'm going to go to my folder, and then under my Sewnet, I'm going to click on a new folder. I'm going to call it Bench Pillow. I'm going to call it Bench Pillow 1 because I've already got a bench pillow out there. So, but this one is called a Bench Pillow 1. We're going to say OK to it. So I had to create that folder name first. Now, when you scroll through your categories, they should all be in alphabetic order, okay? So this is the newest one that I saved right here. Okay, so we're going to close out of here, and then we're going to come down to our Save button right down here in the corner. Bench Pillow 1, long hold to open it. We're going to give it a name. So I'm going to remove New Design, and we're going to put Background. And I size this at 4.5. I'm going to put 4.5, indicating 4.5 inches. And then I'm going to close out of here and put by 8.5, which is 8.5 inches. Okay, so click on Save. Our design is saved. So now anytime you wanted to retrieve this design, and I'm going to just show you something here, how we can retrieve it. I'm going to close out of this one. I'm going to delete it. That was a long hold, and what it opens up is another set of categories for different opportunities like delete, you know, you could duplicate it, whatever it might be, you know, that it said there. Okay, but I wanted to delete it from the workspace. Now to retrieve that, go into your folder, long hold here. This is the one we just saved. So this is our background, 4.5 inches by 5, or 4.5 inches by 8.5 inches. Now we can go forward with bringing in the design, our first design, and then going ahead and stitching it out. So to bring in that design, I'm going to go back into my folder. This time I'm going to go to USB device. When I'm in my USB device, I'm going to just back up here a little bit so that you can see this. When you're in your device, you might have other files on that on your USB, and if you do, just have to realize what their name is. So this is called KDS 127. So this is Kimberbell Designs. So we're going to do a long hold, opens it up into this field, which shows you all the different file formats that can be utilized for this product. Okay, this machine here, Creative Icon 2 and Icon 1, use the VP3 file format. Okay, for those machines that have the smaller hoops, but we have a large hoop, so we're going to go ahead and do the 6x10 designs. And then here are the 7 different panel designs that we will be working on. So the very first one is the 4.5 by 8.5 design, as well as the 7th design. These two are smaller in their width. So these two are going to be utilized when we bring in our design. So bringing in that design, I do a long hold, it pops it onto the workspace. Now I also want to make sure that it's centered. So with it still selected, because it has the orange lines going around it, I want to make sure it's centered, and I click on this icon right here, centering the design on 3 rows of stitches that we'd saved. So we're ready to go. Repositioned it onto the background, and so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's go ahead and embroider this design out. So right down here, there's an option, a stitch out. It's a go. So click on it. Opens up into our embroidery stitch out field. Okay, so in this particular field, I'm going to take off my active stitch technology. I'm going to use my dynamic spring foot 6D free motion. Okay, and then I'm also going to, I'm going to leave on, you know, you can determine, you know, if you want to use the automatic thread cutter or the other automatic, which will, the first one will jump stitch the trims between it. So I'm going to go ahead and choose a second field. Okay. I'm also going to use the base around the design. Okay. This is going to show me where to place my fabric. So I'm going to say okay to these changes. Say okay. Now here it gives you all other pertinent information, the size of the hoop we're using. So it says to attach the hoop, the 260 by 200. I'm going to go ahead and attach that hoop and say okay to this. I'm going to go ahead and grab my layers that I put together. The first one is your background fabric for each of your panels. You've already cut those to size based upon the directions that are printed out and read in its entirety. So I also have fused my my backing onto my piece, and this is the SF101. That's the backing fabric that I used, and then fuse that. And then I also have a piece of batting on the back that's cut larger than the piece. I'm going to open up a few categories so that you can see what we're stitching first and why we're stitching it and so forth. So I'm going to stitch out progress. I'm going to open that field. Okay, in here is the progress. The very first stitch that's going to be stitched out is the basting stitch. I put that in there. I really shouldn't have put that in there at this time because I have no fabric in there, so I don't have to baste anything down. So, but if I wanted to advance over that, I can. So now I'm going to come up to my palette as well. In the palette, okay, are different options. Up in here, I can add a basting stitch or remove it, whatever it might be. I'm going to remove that basting stitch. I'm going to take that out of there and say okay to it because I really don't need it at this point in time because I do not have any of my fabric sections ready to put on at this time. Okay, so I'm going to advance right to the applique section. Now that applique first stitch, we're going to stitch it a line or a square, rectangle, whatever you want to call it, on my stabilizer. Now I hooped my stabilizer, and this is a cutaway mesh stabilizer. Okay, so I had already hooped that, so you didn't see me do that, but I had hooped that prior to the video starting. So I'm going to go ahead and start the stitch. So this is going to stitch the very first step of the applique. Okay, cut and remove the thread tail. If I had one, I would do it at this time. I'm going to advance through it. Go ahead, restart.
No question.
So what it's doing, it's stitching that applique placement line. Over that line is where I'm going to place my batting and my fabric section. I'm going to have those lined up, squared up as such. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this, and so to do that I'm going to remove the hoop a little bit from the machine so it's easier for you to see this. Okay, here is my stitch line, my applique stitch line. Okay, I'm going to place this fabric over that line. I'm going to put the hoop back in. Now I'm just going to hold this, and I'm going to turn my machine down to a slower pace so that I can manipulate if I need to. while it's embroidering that second or tack down stitch on. So I'm going to use the same thread, say okay to it, start the machine. Okay, cut and remove the thread tail. I can cut that thread tail at this time. Cut that off there. Go ahead and start it up. I'm just kind of manipulating the fabric if needed. Right now it's going pretty smooth. Making sure that it doesn't buckle while it's stitching. What it also does, the second line is a double stitch, so it does 2 rounds of stitches to really secure it in place. And this was all created from the applique created, these lines. Okay, now what happened is it's completed that last stitch out for the applique, and we're ready to do the background. So now what happens is whenever you bring in a stitch from the sewing side of the machine, they always come in as a black color. So I mean, if you wanted to change your thread color at this point in time, change your thread color. But this is the thread that I used on the pillow, so I'm going to go ahead and say I'm ready to embroider it out. So I'm going to hit the start button. And if there was a tail, I would trim it. And there isn't, so we're going to go forward with it. As you can also see, right here on the screen, it also shows you a progression of how long that's going to take to stitch out. So that first row is going to take approximately 4 minutes to stitch out. The total time would be 32 minutes right up in here. It also shows you which stitch number you're at. So if you needed to back up or go forward, you would come over to this field over here. If it would stop, these numbers would stop and be highlighted, and I could go forward or backward as needed. So if I broke a thread, I would be utilizing this particular category right here. Up in here, this is showing you the another way to look at the order that the design will stitch out in. So these are all the black stitches, and so there's quite a few of them, so it's progressing throughout those. Down here it also shows pretty much the same thing. There are times when I close this one out because I don't need it open and just rely on this particular color wheel to guide me. So we'll just let this stitch out and I'll be back with you in a few minutes. So here is the second row. It says to change thread if you want to, but I want to maintain that same thread color for the whole background. So I'm going to say okay to it and go ahead and start the machine. So you can see how it starts at the top and it's going to stitch. Oh, there we go. Our thread tail if we had one. I don't have one, so we're going to go ahead and start it up. So we got our background all stitched. So here, I'll take this off to show it to you. That's our background. Isn't that pretty? The little centers of each of the squares are like little stars, and that's why I thought it would be a good design, good background design for this project. Okay, so now we're on to the next portion of the design, which is the section where, you know, I'm going to just close this out so that you can see this. So the next section that's stitching out will be down here. It's a little lamb. And so now, and you're definitely going to be following along with the printout. So whatever, this one is the very first one. You're going to be following page 8. And that's going to tell you what all the stops mean. Okay, what to do and how, or what fabrics to place on there at that specific time. So I'm going to go ahead, and the very first one that I'm going to do, I'm going to use that thread, okay, because it identifies the area very nicely, because on the darker blue fabric it identifies it, so that way I'm going to know where to place that. Okay, this is the thread tail. We're going to just go ahead and bypass that. Now this first section will be for the foam. So what I'm going to do is cut out a piece of foam approximately that size. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just place it on there. So that is the placement line, and there is a thread here, so I'm going to remove it. That is the placement line for this little lamb that's there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change threads right now. Okay, so the next one is going to be the tack down of this foam. Now this foam, you know, if you check with Larry or Annette, going to be able to get you this foam. It's called Soft and Stable. It's a foam stabilizer, and you're going to use just a small little section. But each of the panels are going to have some kind of foam that's added to them. So you probably will need something like this, you know, to make that stand out. And it does make it very 3D-ish looking, so it really looks nice with it added. Okay, so go ahead, start it up. You may want to hold down the section. Some people like to tape it, and taping it is a fine thing. And it's doing a double row here. And I'm going to get out my scissors for trimming that away. So I'm going to take off the hoop from the machine. Oop, here's my scissors, here we go. And I'm just going to trim that away, and it helps to have a real nice sharp pair of scissors for doing all this. Just want to be careful when you're trimming that you're not trimming. Okay, when you're done, go ahead and put your hoop back on again. Okay, and in this one it says to change thread because that's part of the tack down. Now what we're going to do is we're going to do the tack down for the actual material that sits over it. So if there was a thread, you trim it. If there's not. This next group, or this next stop, is for the placement of the fabric itself. Okay, so let's get that out of there. Okay, and per the directions, it also says to cut your pieces if you so choose before you do the applique. I just kind of set it on there. It saves me a step, and I kind of like that idea of saving me a step. So I have the whole piece. So it goes around twice with a stitch. Here again, we're going to remove the hoop. This is time for applique trimming. So we're going to come back in here, get your sharp little scissors. And if you need scissors, I hear that Larry and Annette also have left-handed scissors. So if you're a lefty, they have some really nice left-hand scissors that would definitely work in a situation like this. Or if you're a right-handed person, they have those as well. So go ahead, put this on your machine. This is the thread that I'm going to go around. So this is the top stitch on our little sheet. Okay, now that the machine stopped, we're on to doing the tree, because right up in here you can see the crosshair. It's right on, that's where it's going to start on that tree. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start the machine. I'm going to use the same thread that I used for my little lamb. And with that, it's going to appear really nice on my background fabric. Because if you remember, all it's showing us now is where the positioning of the tree fabric will go. And now that we have our placement line, we can go ahead and put our fabric into position. Go ahead and start it up. Just hold down my fabric to make sure it doesn't shift. See that in a second. But I'm going to go ahead and remove this. There we go. Now we're just going to trim close to. That's why now it's really important that you have that sharp pair of scissors, because you've got these little areas. Project. Way. Grab your needle and you're ready to go. Okay. Got 11 minutes left to stitch out in this particular project. I'm going to get the next part of the project, which are the stars. I use these mylar sheets. It's in assorted mylar colors. They're all shiny and fun, So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a small section for the mylar. I just cut a strip like this, and that way I can reuse it as many times as needed until I use it up. Ready for that. And this is going to be a 5-minute stitch out here for this color. Over mylar, but I want even the stitches to be shiny. Okay, there we go. Let's thread our needle. Now, what I want to do with this, since it is like using a metallic thread, I'm going to slow the machine down again. Let's take it to about right there. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start the machine up. And what it's going to do, it's going to do an applique placement stitch. So that's the, okay, so it's going to do that outline. And it's going to show me where I need to place the mylar section. So now what I do, okay, I put that in place. Okay. Now go ahead, start the machine up. It stops cutting the little tail. I'm just gonna bring the machine forward a little bit here so that you can see this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just remove that mylar. It comes off, tears off very, very, very easily. And there's the little section. So put that back on. Go ahead, and I'm going to still continue with that same thread. I'm also going to be doing the little eyelets that are in here. In this project, as an optional kit, you can buy accessories that have the little lights that you can attach to your pillow so that, you know, they can be sparkling or shimmering. What I chose to do, so what I did with the little eyelet sections, I decided to use little crystals. And so I had crystals, and so I decided to put those on, and I placed them right in the very center. And you'll see, and I'll point that out on the pillow, is when we've completed this section. If you decide that you don't want the eyelets, then what you can do, you can just stop with the embroidery on this section. You don't have to embroider every color or every section here. Now, this next section, I just want to point this out to you, is just a placement line. So this even tells you in the directions, do not stitch it out, okay? So right now, we're pretty well completed with this project as it stands. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and remove it from the machine. Here's the eyelets, 1, 2, 3 of them here. Here's the little area with the mylar on it, so it did a really nice job with that too. Makes it really sparkle. And then here's your other stars, and that looks really pretty as well. So, guess what? We've got one section done. Okay? So now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to go ahead, and if you want to save this, you go ahead and save it in your machine. I already have the design itself. I'm going to close this out. Since I have this design on a USB stick, I'm going to go back into Embroidery Edit, and I'll show you how I remove it. So I have this design, I select it, and if I do a long hold, I can delete all. And I'm going to delete all of them. Now I want to also show you how you can create other area, the background area, that is 6.5 inches by 8.5 inches. So basically what we're going to do is repeat exactly the same procedure that we went through when we created the 4.5 by 8.5 section. We're just going to make it larger. Okay, so we're going to come up here, or down here, sorry, to the Applique Creator. Click on your shapes, basic shape. Create your square, close out of this area so that you can see the screen, edit applique. You're going to click on the trash can because we want to remove that outer applique stitch. We don't need that. Now we want to resize our box though, our square box. Click on the horizontal, 6.50. Whoop. Sometimes my fingers don't work. Say OK to it. Resized it. Right there it shows it's resized. OK. And before you do this, you also have to make sure your padlock is opened. OK, and it is. The next one, this one is 8.50. Say OK. And now it's resized it. OK. Say OK to it, to accept it, send you back into your main workspace. Now here again we want to add our decorative stitches. So let's go into Sequence Creator to retrieve our stitches, and to click on Load Stitch option right there. We're going to come to Category 5, which is Decorative Stitches, 5.4, the subcategory. Scroll down until you get to 13. Hold 13. puts the first design, or that design up there, or that stitch I should say, not design, it's a stitch. Now we're going to go into edit stitch right here, and then we're going to add. So we're going to add stitches, and remember, look in your information field right here to see how many stitches it's going to take to fill up that area. 850, 8.50, that's 8.5 stitches, or 8.5 inches of stitches. We're going to say that's a good thing, so we're going to click OK to it. Okay, now we want to make sure we put this over to the far right side of the screen, or this section of the screen. Move this up a little bit. Oop. Cancel that. Okay, we can also come into edit design, and we can move that up manually right here if we need to. Okay. Then we're going to duplicate this. Now we're going to need, I believe, 4 rows of stitches. Okay. Duplicate this one. Move it over in place. And you're going to be really careful when you do this, not like me, where I'm going too fast. Something like that. Now we're going to duplicate again. So this is our 4th row. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's how many rows we're going to have on this background, which is going to be the 6.5 by 8.5 inches. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to align these. So you can see they're not quite aligned yet, just yet. So select it. And then you're going to just align that up. And I think that's good. Oops, I should have actually started over here, so I apologize for that. So I'm going to move it just in ever so slightly. And make sure you only select 1 row at a time as well. I selected more than one. So I think that's good. Select your 2nd row. You're going to make sure it's lining up with the 1st row that you put in there. And make sure it's, let's just see. I think those 2 are lining up pretty good. Now this one, we're going to move it over. And you're going to be careful and take your time with this. Let's see, I think that's lining up. And then the last row, we're going to move it over. See, when that turns, it's darker color there, so it's not quite there yet. So one more click and we probably will have it. Okay, so we go into our layers, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this one requires 4 rows of those stitches. So we're going to select them. Because I have select multiples on, it's allowing me to select more than one at a time. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and group this. It's all grouped together. Then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to select the applique. I want to make sure everything is centered. So I'm going to go ahead and click on center. And we're going to know that because 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, all zeros in a row there. Now we're going to come into our stitches and we're going to select it and put it in the center. So that's centered. Let's take a peek at it here. See how it looks. It's pretty good down there. and it's pretty good up there as well. You have a little bit more area on each side of it to work with now, which is fine, okay? But it's going to accommodate those other designs. There are 5 designs that come with the Kimberbell package, okay? And this will be your background. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead, after you get this set up exactly the way you want it, you're going to go ahead and click on Save. So this is going to be background, but I'm going to change it to background 6.5 inches. 6, 5, and we're going to come in here by 8, 5, 85. I'm going to just realize that there's a decimal point there. So I'm going to save this, and then we're just going to close out of it, and we'll try and retrieve it again. And if I go like this, delete all, I'm going to click on delete all. It's asking me to confirm. I say yes. Now, when I go into this, if I wanted to select that larger background, you can see here, this one is larger than that one. Okay, so, but also by the name of it. Okay, so you're going to long hold and it puts it onto the workspace. Okay, now we want to retrieve one of the wider designs. So we're going to go into our folder where the USB device is activated. Activate it. And we're going to remember that the first design and the last design are the 2 narrowest of the 7 designs. So this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. Okay, those 5 will be utilizing this larger background. So in this situation, to continue on with our process of embroidery, we're going to do the second one. Okay, I'm going to also make sure I click on the center tab to center within that design, or within that background design that we were working with. And here we go. Now, you would do this and those other 5 exactly the same manner that this one is done, using the larger background. I have to go and I have to finish sewing out some of mine, so I'm going to continue on with the whole process. So I'm going to remove this from the hoop. Okay. And I would take this to the cutting board and trim it down. Now what we're going to do, we're going to use these orange pop rulers to make sure we trim to the precise measurement that those sections are required to be in. Okay, so now that we have it all positioned right, we're going to cut the sides first with the inner ruler in place, and you're going to hold it down, and you're going to, don't cut your fingers, start at one end and go to the other. Okay, and I'm going to just rotate this. And if you had a rotary mat, that would be a good time to use it as well for that situation. Okay, got the 2 sides cut. Once the 2 sides are cut, and we're going to make sure that they're cut properly. Okay, I think so. Then what we're going to do is we're going to cut the top and the bottom. Okay, we're going to see how this works here. And, okay, so since we're not cutting all the way over here, we can start right there. Because that's where, okay, cut that out, and then we'll rotate it again and cut the top. Now I think the sides, you know, need to be a little, I'm going to cut those with the scissors here. Cut that off. Cut that off. Okay. Down to the corner. There we go. There's our piece. And then you can join them together, you know. And you can follow the directions in the Kimberbell that they have provided for you. The orange rulers as well, the directions are written up in the Kimberbell direction sheet, so make sure, and the first one is on page 9, so if you need more direction as to how to use them, I would definitely refer to that for a really good reference. Now, these rulers, I really like them only because, you know, you can center your design, okay? And that way you know exactly where that edge is going to be, and you know your design is going to be centered in the square itself. Okay, so anyway, but that's pretty much how that is. So now I just wanted to also show you the pillow again with those crystals that were added. You could see each one of the sections has several areas where the little crystal was added into the what do you call those, the little punch hole areas. So I didn't punch them out or anything, but I mean, if you wanted to punch those little areas out and put those lights in, you could definitely do that. Okay. Another thing that I did, I didn't do any fancy stitching or quilting along the edges, the bottom edge or the top edge and the bottom edge of it. I just used I drew a straight line, and I went from corner to corner, and then I quilted it in place. Now, one other thing that I did do as well is right up in here, I continued on with the phrase "Joy to the World," okay, and I wrote that along this area up here, and I used it by using the sequence creator again, and I brought in a sewing machine font that's built onto the Icon 2 machine as well, an Icon 1. So I used that, and I brought in more of the phrases from this Christmas carol, you know, Joy to the World. So you could definitely do that, or you could just do straight line quilting in that area too. The choice is pretty much yours. And so I had a lot of fun creating this pillow, and I hope you did as well. I hope you learned some new things about your machine, and also how you can create something completely different, you know, taking it to a new level of creativity for you and your family, whoever you give your pillow to. So I just want to say it's been a lot of fun showing you this project, and so until next time, okay, so see you later, guys.